Some bosses in the Doom Tower just feel absolutely impossible, especially if you're still in like the early mid game of your account. But what if I told you, man, that there were certain champions of Raid Shadow Legends that are actually quite accessible, right? We're talking just epics here. We're able to solo some of the most difficult bosses in Doom Tower and dungeon bosses and all of that good stuff as well, man. This video is going to be all about epic champs, right? Fairly easy to get your hands on that can completely solo bosses in Raid and are well worth building out so you never have to worry about that boss again. What better place to start, man, than Taragi the Frog and our list of epics that can solo the Scarab King. And Taragi is simply a frog of many talents, right? He brings strong decreased attack on his A1, brings an AoE provoke on the A2, ally protect as well on the A3, and then a chance to inflict poison against attackers on his passive, right? Great early game Demon Lord clan boss, champion, solid into waves of enemies, but because of his passive and because he is HP based, if you want to take on Scarab King, you're going to expect to be provoked a lot of the time, unless you specifically build a team that can deal with that. Taragi doesn't give a damn. All you've got to do with Taragi the Frog is build him to be relatively fast and then have as much health as possible in a regeneration and an immortal set, and his passive will do the rest, right? As long as you've got the accuracy on Taragi to be landing the poisons against the Scarab King, all he has to do is live and you're good to go, right? Scarab King, no longer a problem. And for one of the bosses in this game that's just the biggest pain in the posterior, that's a pretty goddamn good luxury. But Taragi isn't the only one, man. Where's Vrask? Where is he? There he is. Vrask is another one of these champions that can be built out to deal with Scarab King, mostly because of his passive, which just heals all allies by 10% of his max HP whenever this champion inflicts a crit, so you build him with 100% crit, and then he just repeatedly attacks him with his A1, which gives him some 10 meter fill as well. So how does Vrask live against the Scarab? Does he require a regeneration set? Not really, right? He can kind of get off enough healing with this passive alone and be just fine as long as you have him with a Blood Shield Ring accessory artifact. What does Blood Shield Ring do? Well, it gives the wearer a shield worth 5% of the damage that they deal after they attack on in. Why is this so good against Scarab? Because if you are shielded against the Scarab King boss in Doom Tower, then it will no longer counterattack your champ. So if you have a Blood Shield Ring on Vrask, he's getting all of that healing from just smacking in with his A1, and he's never triggering the boss to counterattack, meaning he pretty much has enough healing to get by from the Blood Shield Ring alone. What you can then do is go ahead and equip him in 4 pieces of toxic gear so that he has a chance to inflict a small poison debuff, and now you've got yourself a Scarab King killer champion. Again, all you're going to need for this is basically that 100% crit that we talked about. He, of course, doesn't need accuracy to land the poison from the toxic set. You just need him to be fast as hell and to have as high max HP as possible and that Blood Shield Ring. Next up, man, we've got good old Vergus, who is a little bit of a strange one, to be honest. A lot of his survivability is going to be coming down to his passive, which reads places a shield buff on this champion equal to 10% of their max HP for 2 turns whenever this champion loses 10% or more of their max HP from a single hit, right? Which he should be doing against Scarab, and also place a continuous heal buff on this champion for a couple of turns every time their HP drops below 50%. Now, continuous heal buffs, shield buffs, you've got to be careful. The Scarab King can rip these buffs off of your champs, and so with Vergus, you've got to build him with high resistance. So it's quite a unique build. You've got to build him with about 400-ish, 450-ish resistance if you're looking at slightly higher stages of Scarab King. I'm not sure how little resistance you can get away with the easiest stages. You know what, I'll actually look that up real quick. Okay, wow, so you can build him with 175 resistance at the lowest possible stage in normal mode, only 225 resistance to resist the Scarab King at stage 100, so the hardest stage of normal mode. But then if you want to get involved into hard Doom Tower and go all the way to the most difficult level of Scarab King and solo it with Vergus, he is going to need about 400-ish resistance, a little bit more to be safe. You can consider as well that you can put a resistance aura team leader as the team leader when you're running like a solo-ish clear for hard mode Scarab King, and that can bolster up your resistance stats a little bit more on your Vergus if you're lacking. And then you want to run your Vergus in either a toxic set or a destroy set. However, I will say if you were going to run your Vergus in a destroy set with like high resistance, make sure that you also farm up his masteries so that you're getting the War Master procs every now and then. Otherwise, the kill speed is going to be glacially slow, right? It's going to be terrible. I will also mention as well that Vergus is actually part of my beginner sign-up link, which is down below at the top of the video description box. I insisted when designing that link with Plarium that Vergus appears in that list because he can solo a couple of Doom Tower bosses that really cause people a lot of problems. So hey man, if you're looking to create a new raid account in 2025, make sure to do so using my beginner promo link down below at the top of the video description box, man. It's 4 free champions. Vegas is among the epics that you'll get as you level up your account, and you'll get a starter legendary champ with Karato Fox Hunter as soon as you're done with the tutorial. And all you gotta do is create a new account using that link, man. And so Vegas is my next pick for the next champion that can also solo the next boss that we're about to cover, which is Bommal Dreadhorn. Once again, you're going to want to build him with high resistances, and this time, instead of the Toxic set or the Destroy set, you just need to have your Vegas in a regeneration set, more focus on just high health, and again, farm up his masteries, or the fight is going to take 1,000 years. You might actually run out of turns to get Bommal the Dreadhorn dead if he doesn't have masteries, but yeah, he should be able to do a job on Bommal as well. And if it seems like I'm not going into like super deep details here of how all of these champions can pull off these builds and how they can solo these bosses, it's because we'd be here for about 2 hours if I went into like the exact builds for all of these champions and stat recommendations and stat cutoffs and all of that stuff. But what you can do is just hit YouTube and just say, well, just look up a guide that any other content creator has made, you know. For example, Lady Annabelle against Bommal the Dreadhorn. There's guides for this everywhere. This is a notorious solo champ, quite accessible, you know, Spirit Affinity epic champ. She holds a special place in my heart, man, and not for the reason that you're thinking, okay, but because she was the first real answer that I had to Bommal Dreadhorn, man. I pulled her quite early on my main account, built her up, never look back, man. This is a great champion, and it all comes down to her passive, really. Like, the rest of her skills are fine. Double hitter, A1. She gets a bit of extra healing from this, which is nice for solo purposes. She brings an AoE decreased speed, AoE leech, right? She's, like, fine for faction wars and stuff like that. But it really comes down to her passive. No cooldown on this sucker. Heal this champion by 40% if they're max HP whenever an ally or an enemy dies. Now, of course, Bommal the Dreadhorn is summoning bombs all the time during the fight. Every time those bombs explode, they deal 40% of your champion's max health as damage. However, those bombs that Bommal spawns count as enemy champions, okay? So when they explode, Lady Annabelle will always out-heal Bommal's bombs. And all you gotta do is farm up her masteries so that she can kill the boss within like 15-20 minutes or however the hell long it takes, you know. Put her in a regeneration set with decent speed. That's another thing as well, another tip when you're building out your solo champions that are in a regeneration set. Make sure that it's not just a crap load of health that you're building up on the champion, but also good speeds, because the more turns that they have, the more that they're going to trigger the healing from the regeneration set as well, right? So you've got to think about it like that too. Now, another champion that we've got to cover extremely briefly, because he's basically Lady Annabelle 2.0 with his passive, is Burangiri. Force Affinity, Shadowkin Epic. His passive is exactly the same as Lady Annabelle's. Now, he doesn't have a double hit at A1. He doesn't have the healing as well coming in from his A1, so I guess he's technically slightly harder to build out in terms of stats for soloing Bommal, but it's really a negligible difference. They can both do the job just fine all the way up to the hardest difficulties of Bommal, as long as you've got enough HP percentage on these guys and enough speed. Now for the dungeon solo gods. Now, when it comes to soloing in just the regular dungeons, right, Ice Golem, Dragon, that kind of thing, a lot of these champions, they can't actually solo the dungeon, right? Some of them struggle against the waves and kind of need an escort to get them to the boss. But if you get them to the boss, they're going to take care of business, right? So there is that small caveat. However, Mysiliac Priest Ornn does not fall into this category. This guy can solo, I don't know what stage he can go up to in Dragon and Ice Golem, but it's pretty goddamn good, and definitely at least stage 20, maybe stage 24, 25, depending on affinity for some of these dungeons, but stage 20 is a doddle, and he can solo his way through the waves as well, right? So he's going to tackle enemies on his A3, places a couple poison debuffs and poison sensitivity debuff on all enemies, and also gets a little bit of healing on your Mysiliac Priest Ornn as well, right? Then he brings all kinds of ways as well of activating his poisons, and so he can actually slowly, albeit, solo his way through the waves, which is kind of crazy. Even his A1, by the way, as a double hitter, each hit 25% chance of placing a strong poison debuff as well, but his passive helps him to live, which is most important, right? So whenever a poison debuff is activated on an enemy, increase this champion's HP and defense by 25%. It does reset each round, but it stacks up again pretty gosh darn quickly, you know. So Meseliac Priest Ornn is a champ I pulled just recently on my account. And why is it so good to build a champion out like this? You might think, okay, well, I'm already farming, you know, Dragon Stage 20 or whatever the hell. Why should I bother building out my Meseliac Priest Ornn? Well, it's so that you can then queue up into Dragon with just the Meseliac Priest Ornn in his regeneration gear and immortal gear, alongside 4 food champions during a Dragon tournament. So this way you're going to be farming up food champions and leveling up food. You're going to be farming the Dragon tournament at the same time and getting all of those free rewards. And then once all's said and done, by the time the tournament's done, you might have like a bunch of just level 30 food sitting there on your account that you otherwise wouldn't have, and the next champion training event is going to be an absolute doddle. And again, that's mostly for Ice Golem and for Dragon. In a similar vein, we've got Venomage, kind of just like a similar-ish thing. With his A3, attacks all enemies, has a chance of placing 2 poison debuffs for 2 turns. What Venomage doesn't have is a super reliable way of activating the poisons against the waves. He does have it on a double hitter on his A1, so once he gets to the boss, he can activate his poisons quite reliably, which is lovely, but against the waves, he's going to take a bit longer to kill him off, right? His passive also reduces damage inflicted by enemies that are under heal reduction by 15%, and he does place the heal reduction with his A3, and so yeah, Venomage can do the job as well, right? He's just like another kind of variation of Ornn, maybe a little bit slower, kind of, I guess, against the waves when it comes to soloing these dungeons, but he can do the job. And you might want to build out your Venomage anyway as a heal reduction option for Cursed City against Amius at a later stage, so he brings a little bit of value against, you know, like endgame challenges as well. So that's Dragon taken care of. Let's take a detour to the east, man, to Sand Devil's Necropolis, which is a dungeon that you're going to want to be farming kind of after the early game is finished up. And the greatest champion you could ever hope to pull to get this job done. Everybody knows it's coming already, man. It's good old Godseeker Aniri. Void Epic. So huge congratulations if you do pull her, because, yeah, she's going to absolutely level up your account, man. So she brings a revive on the A3. She brings all kind of healing on the rest of her skills. On her passive, she also brings a 4-turn cooldown auto revive. If an ally is about to get killed by a fatal hit, preempt that hit and instantly place a revive or death buff on them for 1 turn. What this enables in Sand Devil's Necropolis is a duo carry team. You can basically pair Godseeker Aniri with any max HP damage dealer in the game, a good old HP burner, for example. And with the correct defensive stats, so high enough health and high enough defense, and just the right speed, Godseeker Aniri will make herself and that HP burner champion, or that max health damage dealer champion, completely unkillable against Sand Devil. And this finally brings us to a team that I can showcase just a little bit, man. We've got my Aniri all up in here, my ninja built out with like 430 accuracy or something. He could also use just a little bit more, and I'm queuing into stage 24 of Sand Devil right here. The only thing slowing me down from going any higher is ninja's accuracy, and that's it. And we can just queue up 3 food champions alongside Godseeker Aniri, who can revive herself with their passive as well, by the way, as you can see. And yeah, she's speed tuned and defensive statted perfectly to live through these kind of intermediate turns that the Sand Devil is going to get off, these intermediary turns rather. Revive herself up and always revive the ninja, who then gets off the damage with the perfect timing. It's one of those teams that once you've got it set up, oh my god, man, being able to farm Sand Devil tournaments and food at the same time just feels so insanely good, especially like during CVCs, and you can like double dip and quad dip and quintuple dip and all of that. Yeah. Godseeker Aniri is a game changer. Scooting on over from Sand Devils, man, let's touch on Spider's Den, which for epic champions, is there a champion that can absolutely solo Spider's Den? I'm not sure that there is. Correct me if I'm wrong. There are champions out there like Atjak the Wenderin who basically trivialize Spider to the point where you just never have to worry about the Spiderlings anymore, and that's pretty goddamn good, right? So Atjak brings a very unique A3. His passive is unbelievable as well, by the way, so just get ready for that. But his A3 is an attack all enemies, 3-turn cooldown bugged, with a 95% chance bugged of placing a freeze debuff for 1 turn on enemies whose attack is higher than their defense, which is all of the spiderlings. And why do I say 95% chance, by the way? I'm talking about when he has all of his masteries built out as well for that increased chance of landing the freeze. Now, that is if you go into the Fearsome Presence mastery, of course. That's the mastery I'm talking about. And then the rest of your team is just got to control the boss's 10 meter. And, you know, if you've got like a mass HP burner, like an Akoth the Seared, who's very, very accessible, mass HP burner, you just get him farming secret rooms, or a Mordecai or whatever. You just burn all of the spiderlings. Atchak, 95% land rate freeze on all of the spiders, just takes care of business, and everyone else can just focus on smacking down the boss. And this is further supplemented by this busted passive, which reads, and we don't even need to read the first bit, fill the 10 meters of all allies by 10% every time an enemy under a freeze debuff gets a turn. That's a lot of spiderling. Like, if you're just ignoring the spiderlings and permanently freezing the crap out of them, there's no cooldown on this passive, by the way. So it's just like 12 spiderlings on the field, 120% 10 meter fill. It's just get an extra turn when the freezes wear off. That's what this skill should read, pretty much for Atchak, except it's your entire team getting the extra turn, you know, as the freeze wears off on all of the spiderlings. It's just unbelievable, man. Unbelievable specialist champ. Doesn't solo spider, but he kind of might as well, because the rest of the team could just be like a couple of Armigers, a Cold Heart, and what? Like an Akoth the Seared or something? Bunch of rares and a freebie epic from Doom Tower? Well, to be fair, you might need a speed booster as well. Anyways, man, another champ that's kind of like this, Allura. I'm not going to spend long on this. Everybody knows Allura, man. Just get her to the boss in Finite. Just escort her to the boss, right? And as long as you can break the Finite shield one time and just have your Allura spam her A1 constantly against the boss, you're good. That's it. She just conquers normal mode Finite completely alone. You could even equip her up in an Affinity Breaker set as well, which would then give a chance for weak hits to be converted into, like, well, just a not weak hit. So even if she's negative affinity against the Finite from time to time, you can just wiggle your way through those stages by just playing like one battle against the Finite while you're a weak affinity, and then switch her back out of the Affinity Breaker set, you know, if you wanted to do it that way. But yeah, I mean, her 10 meter control is just second to none. She's just an absolute joke. And now we're kind of moving away from the solo carry style champions just a little bit, and champions that you might just want to hold on to unlock content on your account at a later date. They might not be useful to you right now, but when it comes to the likes of hard mode Fire Knight, 10 meter reduces like Allura are not going to be usable anymore, and champions like Creodan, even if you choose to not use this guy on your account in the early game, he's going to come in massively clutch when freezes begin to reduce the Fire Knight's 10 meter in hard mode, right? He's got a triple hitter on his A1, 35% chance on each hit of placing that freeze debuff for 1 turn. He's solid against the waves as well, to be honest. Double hitter A2, each hit with a high chance of placing freeze debuff for 1 turn. Also brings increased speed and 10 meter fill as well on the A3. So just a great utility epic. Make sure that you vault him up for hard mode Fire Knight. And I do have a couple more honorable mentions, by the way, of kind of specialist epics for certain areas of the game. But another champ with all of these freezes is good old Neldor Rhineblade. Again, triple hitter A1, 40% chance of placing freeze debuff for 1 turn on his A1. Just vault them up for hard Fire Knight. You want to collect as many of these like multi-hitter freeze champions as you can on your account anyway, because at the end of the day, you're going to eventually start running into battles of hard mode Fire Knight in Cursed City, where you're going to have limited options, right, and kind of limitations imposed on what champions you can run into certain bosses based on faction. So just having a good spread of multi-hitter freeze champs is going to always come in clutch on your account anyway a bit later on. Ooh, I think I'm just realizing a champion that I missed off of this list. Torture Helm? Do people still use Torture Helm to solo Dragon's Lair? Apparently they do, according to the ratings, man. I actually forgot all about this guy. So if you make this guy fast enough, I think he just can't lose. He like, because of his passive, he simply cannot die against Dragon, no matter what. It's not a very fast clear, but the Dragon can just be consistently one-shotting him, and he just gets picked up again every time. This is a guy that I haven't watched a guide on in a long time, though, man. Does anybody still use Torture Helm to solo Dragon? And if you feel like I missed any champs, by the way, off of this list, please do go ahead and make sure to mention down below, man. Help some folks out. Honorable mention, by the way, my favorite epic champion as sort of like a specialist champ to take into Chimera, just for completing trials, has been Ethelyn. I really really enjoyed building this guy out. Did my account need to build him out? Not really, but I wanted to showcase him anyway, so I did make a video covering Ethelyn the Golden. He brings self buff of increase crit damage and increase accuracy, then gets an extra turn on his A3, and then he attacks all enemies 2 times, placing block active skills or true fear if the block active skills doesn't land, right? So he's actually a pretty solid arena nuker early on, but of course into Chimera, block active skills is great against the Viper form of Chimera, true fear is great against the Ram form of Chimera. He just brings a lot of kind of like essential debuffs to the fight, and you understand that we're going very, very far off the beaten path here when it comes to solo champions, but I'm also going to honorable mention Fenshi as well. He's not quite an allure, but when it comes to a finite champ specialist, he can do a damn good job as well. Triple hitter A1 with a strong decreased speed debuff, and then on his A2, bookable down to a 2-turn cooldown, so very, very spammable against the finite boss itself. Triple hitter, with each hit having a 75% chance of decreasing enemy 10 meter by 15%. So yeah, just very, very, very good stuff on Fenshi as well. Alright, man, I think I touched on all of the champs that I want to touch on, man. I'll pass it on over to you guys. Let me know which ones I missed, and most importantly, you know, help your bros out down there, man. Hey, thanks for watching. Hope you also did enjoy. Remember to use my beginner promo link down below at the top of the video description box, man, to get the best start possible to your new raid account in 2025. All you got to do is create a new account using that link for all kinds of sweet, sweet freebies, including a starter legendary. And I'm going to catch all of you all just a tad bit later, man.